The following podcast may contain adult language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
All right, welcome to yet another episode of They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast, and I'm your host, Lee Russell. I'm joined by my two luscious, lavish lesbian co-hosts, Daniel Harper and Paul Romali. How are you gentlemen doing tonight?
How did you know?
I just suspected.
Yeah, it's a thing, no.
I think it was your good hair day picks this morning that's tipped me off.
Yeah, unfortunately that's not still going on. Hey, it's great to talk about Good Hair Day on a podcast. Audio format, people are definitely interested in this.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the best thing about you, Dan, is I don't know where the beard starts and the hair begins, so it's like...
It's all just one thing. I'm kind of like Cousin It or Sasquatch or, hypertrichinosis is what we call this. So it's
yes.
Yeah.
He is the wolf man.
He's a Mexican carnival freak.
I would probably make more money, so.
Yeah. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm here. There you go. That's right.
There you go. You got, what, the first 15 minutes of the film we're going to cover tonight?
So I am completely unprepared.
That's your gimmick.
Well, basically, that's how I approach most life anyway, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Pull it out and start poking.
That's definitely a strategy that works well with lesbian vampires, by the way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So we're going to be covering a Jess Franco film here tonight, another one of Daniel's picks, and a pretty good one. But before we get into that, we're going to be sort of talking about what we've watched in the last week or so, and we're going to do a round of movie gods. So, Daniel, if you want to start with what you've watched this week, you can go right ahead.
Sure. First thing I watched was actually Alice in Wonderland, and probably not a version you've ever seen. This was a TV production made for the BBC in 1966. It's directed by Jonathan Miller. It has Peter Sellers. It has John Gigeland. It has, literally just anybody who was a British actor in 1966 is basically in this. It's an amazing long cast. And it's all in black and white. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long. And the whole point is to kind of do a very bared down without like crazy costumes and stuff, but to do Alice in Wonderland in this abstract way that's true to the book, but that doesn't have the kind of like they don't have animal head costumes, they don't have it's just kind of surrealism. It's very stark, it's very image based, and it's kind of brilliant. And I found this through my friend Jack Graham's podcast. He did this a little while ago, and I'll try to give you a link so you can kind of check it out. The film is available on various illicit file-sharing mechanisms if you are so inclined.
Oh, none of us use that stuff.
And I would highly recommend. There's also, from what I understand, a really nice DVD release, which includes the 1933 Alice in Wonderland as well as the 66 version. I would. I'm considering buying that DVD at some point. This film is definitely worth not only watching but revisiting. I only watched it once, but it was it's pretty fascinating. It's a great version. It captures a lot of the kind of social anxiety, the psychedelia in kind of a not cliched way, and a lot of that kind of stuff that was going on in the original story and in kind of what's going on in 1966 in Britain. So really well done.
Cool. I was certain when you said Alice in Wonderland you were going to say you watched the porno version of Alice in Wonderland for like the 70s or whatever.
I did that too. I mean, that's kind of my, hold on, are we allowed to talk about the porn we watch on this podcast? Because, I'm going to talk way longer every week,
Yeah. That's a whole other thing. Get out the white rabbit and go into the hole, if you know what I mean.
We're going to go way longer and way deeper, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's how it goes. We are talking about lesbian vampires this week, so... The other thing I watched was, after watching Vampyros Lesbos, I was actually curious enough about this other film that he made literally right after this, starring the same actress, Miranda Soledad, and I mean a lot of the same crew. And this is a film called She Killed in Ecstasy, which was, anytime you give me a film title that is also a sentence, I'm down. Like, that's kind of like all I need to enjoy a film, is give me a film title that's also a sentence. I don't want to talk too much about this film, just because I think we are going to cover this in a few weeks. The only thing I'm going to say is, after Vampyros Lesbos and She Killed in Ecstasy, why the fuck did you get me started on this guy with Zombie Lake and Oasis of the Zombies? Because I'm just saying, it's, Oasis of the Zombies, Zombie Lake, that's one thing, but Oasis of the Zombies, why did you make me sit through that piece of shit when there's much better stuff available? And that's kind of all I'm going to say about She Killed in Ecstasy for now. Because I'm going to go into some detail later on.
Listen, Daniel, we had to build you up. I mean, we start with the really bad stuff, and then we build you up, and we bring you to the peak of the mountain. So
that's fair. Except I recommended this one because I found it. So that's
we were trying to make you open to discovery, and
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's the excuse I'm using anyway.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's all I really have to talk about this week. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you mean I'm not going to go on for an hour and talk about the movies I watched the way I did last week?
Who cares? If you wanted to, you could, but fuck it. That saves me editing another podcast.
I did listen to that episode that we recorded last week, by the way, Lee, and I must say, when I say edit this out, or so I don't sound like an idiot, I actually try to edit it out so I don't sound like an idiot. Because I don't know if you didn't notice that I said that a couple of times, or if you just
I noticed.
decided. Okay, you just left it in. That's fair. Okay, I'm with you.
To be fair, I listened through the whole thing and I was like, I'm not editing this. I'm not editing this.
That's fair. I'm with you. I get that.
All right, Paul. Anything you've watched or purchased in the last week or so?
Purchased, no. Watched. I've been going the 90s, 80s, because back to VHS. But I watched some comedy, satire comedy, Full Moon High, nice werewolf movie. Really just slapstick comedy kind of stuff. I really like it. Beyond Reanimator, I watched just a couple different old more horror movies based. I did actually sit down and watch Maniac Cop 2. And one thing I did notice in Full Moon High, I don't if you know her name is Lauren Landon from Maniac Cop is actually a cameo in that. The blonde from Maniac Cop is actually in there. So I was like, hey, look at that. I know we did cover Maniac Cop. And,
no, we never covered that.
It never happened.
We covered that, yeah.
Yeah, well, we did. We did. Yeah. Just other stuff like that. Just been watching like some Halloween 2s and just chilling out with the kids. Dracula Dead and loving it, having some fun.
Yeah, that's good. Dracula Dead and loving it. Something we are set to cover next week. Actually, we're going to be doing a Mel Brooks episode. So it's refreshing that Paul actually watched one of the films that we're going to cover for the.
I could try to forget it if you want. I can see.
Hey, whatever you want to do, man. We're pretty fast and loose here, so it's
maybe I'll fast forward one just for the novelty of it.
I could drink. I just drink some amnesia wine, like the lady in the film that we're just about to do did, and I won't know what happened.
Well, I'll tell you what, Daniel. We'll find the most racist, misogynist film we can find, and then that way you'll have to fast forward through it. And
the thing is, I would
fast Hell of the Living Dead. What the hell?
Yeah, I would actually watch that so I would have something to talk so I could legitimately complain about it.
All right, I have a couple things here to mention. I actually, with Daniel's recommendation, I watched Crazy Mary, Dirty Larry from 1974, which is on Netflix right now, and fuck, I really enjoyed the hell out of that film. I pretty much like Peter Fonda and anything he did in that period, and Susan George is super fucking hot in that film, and I think it works really well. That's one we got to cover on the podcast. I don't want to talk too much about it. I think that's a really great film. I watched it and I enjoyed it, so I'll just leave it at there for now.
No, I agree. I don't want to talk too much about it until we actually talk about it, but that's on my short list for best of the year, honestly.
And the other one I watched on Netflix right now, there's a handful of Shaw Brothers films that just sort of appeared on Netflix in the last little while. I watched Heroes of the East, which is a Shaw Brothers film that I had not seen. The podcast I follow, friends of the show, the Midnight Movie Cowboys, they are constantly pimping this fucking film. And then I finally got around to watching it, and my God, probably the best Shaw Brothers film I've ever seen. Really great martial arts film that combines romantic comedy, battle of the sexes, clash of cultures, basically showcases different styles of martial arts really well. And it's a refreshing film because it's a Hong Kong martial arts film that does not treat fucking Japanese people as degenerate mongrels who are all evil and have Hitler mustaches.
But isn't that true? I mean, isn't that just true of the Japanese? I think that,
It's an objective truth, but it's nice to, sugarcoat it a little bit.
Well, that's kind of funny because, because all the martial arts films that are during like any kind of World War II or anything anywhere near any Japanese, they come over and they all look like little Hitlers. It's really funny.
Yeah, one we have to cover at some point is, I think it's called Streets on Fire, which is overtly racist against the Japanese, like, to the point where it's just, like, hitting you over the head. But this one, it treats all the Japanese martial artists with great respect. Although, of course, at the same time, it's a Chinese martial arts film, so the Chinese, in the end, has to win, and he has to win dominantly. But he doesn't gloat or anything like that. He actually treats his opponents with respect. And it's Gordon Liu. Most North American audiences know from the Kill Bill films, know him as Johnny Mo and Pai Mei in the two different Kill Bill films. He's fucking badass in this film, man. Like he's so yeah. I mean, but he is so underrated. Like he's one of those guys that kind of flies under the radar compared to like Jet Li and those guys. And Jet Li made like a lot of really shitty movies over here, and he doesn't deserve quite the respect that I think Gordon Liu does. He's just really badass. I forget the name of the female lead in this as well, but she's really good. I think probably the only complaint I have of the film is that they kind of dropped the romantic comedy thing between the two of them by the second half of the film. But at the same time, it's like they just bombard you with so much like really great fight scenes that are not, they don't feel like those overly staged kind of ridiculous almost dance sequences that you sometimes see in these martial arts films. Like they come off as real martial arts contests. So it's just really well done. It's one of the best films I've seen from Shaw Brothers, and not only that, it looks beautiful. For a film that's mostly shot on soundstage sets and stuff like that, looks fucking fantastic, great colors. And I was just really impressed. This is one that's going to go on my best for the year for watching this year. So.
Well, fuck. Now I have to watch it for next week. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, there you go. It's on Netflix, so get it while you can, guys. There's a lot of great Shaw Brothers stuff on Netflix right now.
Technically speaking, Japan is farther east than China is, so.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on where you set the prime meridian, though. That is a
But it is like that title actually even pays more respect, honestly, to like the Japanese because the whole idea of the story is that there's this one Chinese guy who marries a Japanese bride as a sort of like arranged marriage, and then he rejects her because I'm not putting up with your shit. I'm a martial artist and I want to practice my stuff, and so he's kind of discombobulated by her sort of overt wanting to do stuff and not just be a sort of a submissive wife. And so she goes back to Japan and rekindles with her sort of trainer in Japan, and then he brings a bunch of his martial artist buddies over to China to fight this guy. So you get all these different Japanese styles against his kung fu style, which is pretty interesting. So they are sort of the titular heroes of the East in a certain degree, because all the fight, like, it's cool. Like all the fights, it's not like typical martial arts film with like lots of blood. Like no one dies in this film. Just martial arts guys fighting and determining who's the better guy. It's pretty good. It's really refreshing and really nice. It's a really great fucking film. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I think we can move on to Movie God if both you gentlemen are so inclined. Daniel, I'll let you start if you have anything you want to throw at us.
I do. I'm gonna throw this at either one of you guys who want to answer it. I'm going to go classic on this one, and I'm going to make you pick between two directors. Okay. I'm going to make you kill a genre today. I'm going to make you kill either Alfred Hitchcock or John Ford.
Ooh.
And the way this game works, for anybody who doesn't know, is the idea is you have to kill one of these two people or one of these two movies or whatever, and the idea is that not only does this not exist now, but it gets erased from the timeline. If you kill John Ford, you basically kill the Western. And if you kill Alfred Hitchcock, you basically kill the thriller. Or reshape it in some interesting way. So
that's easy for me. Bye-bye, Ford.
Because you don't like westerns.
Because I'm racist. Wait, that doesn't work, does it? No.
No.
No, I just don't get in. I would rather watch thrillers than westerns.
Yeah, without John Ford, you probably wouldn't have John Wayne either. That's probably one of those like sideline things.
Well, I apologize to the Duke. You're dead.
Yeah, well, that's the weird thing because that was one of the weird great marriages of Hollywood because John Ford was actually kind of like a leftist kind of socialist kind of guy.
John Ford was a total left-wing dude, and John Wayne was really, really right-wing.
Yeah.
And yet they made amazing films. In the conflict between them, they made great films. In fact, that's the only way you can really understand The Searchers, is to understand it as basically an argument between John Ford and John Wayne, at least in my opinion.
And Wayne was a Mason. So there you go.
Yeah. You know what? Alfred Hitchcock, I kind of think of who he influenced. Without him, you don't have really Dario Argento taking off because that was his primary influence in his early films. Honestly, you'd probably see Argento probably making the shit he makes now in the last 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to his early stuff.
Probably lose De Palma.
De Palma, I was about to say, yeah, De Palma's probably gone. Fuck, that is a terrible decision to fucking make. Because
then Francois Truffaut would have had to interview somebody else for his terrible book, so there's that too.
With Ford, if you don't have Ford, you arguably don't have. Well, maybe you don't have Leone making his films. You could argue that he'd still steal enough from Kurosawa, but then again, Kurosawa was stealing from Ford and stuff as well. To a certain
Ford is
degree.
one of those real. I think what's interesting about this is these are both like guys that are like so influential on a handful of people in really overt ways, but on kind of everybody working within a genre.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that like you lose Kurosawa, for instance. Kurosawa still makes films, but he makes very different films without John Ford. You know what I mean?
Oh man, I think my decision also falls in the same vein as Paul, where I just have to think of the genre I love better and the films I love better that came from that genre or influenced by that genre. And honestly, I think I have to keep John Ford just because I want Leone to be the Leone I know. I mean, Hitchcock, as great as he is, honestly, he influences certain things. Like, again, he influences De Palma and stuff, but there's still a lot of great horror stuff that isn't overtly referencing Hitchcock that would still be here. But with John Ford, I think that kind of changes American film to a drastic degree that I don't think I could accept. So I would have to kill Hitchcock, and I would have to keep Ford.
There you go.
Awesome. Nice to done. Yeah. No, I like that answer. I thought about it. I mean, it's a hard decision, but ultimately I think even though I think I like individual Hitchcock films more than I like individual Ford films.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. I mean, because I love fucking Psycho, and I love Vertigo, and I love a lot of other ones. But I think that John Ford has a bigger influence on stuff that I love.
That's exactly what.
And I think without Hitchcock, you might have still gotten some interesting stuff. I think it would have pushed more towards noir and less towards thriller, and I think that might have been it would have been different. The one thing that Hitchcock brought a lot of technical innovations into.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
That's the other side that is kind of hard to predict. Like, would storyboarding have become like a big thing without Hitchcock? Maybe, but he did start off as an animator, so
Yeah, that's what made it really hard for me because when I think about it, like Hitchcock's films, like just if you're looking at each film on a singular level. Generally, they're way better than Ford. Like, there's just a lot better Hitchcock films than there are Ford films. But Ford's, I would just argue he's probably a bit more influential overall than Hitchcock is. At least for the stuff I like. So that's the way I got to go. But that's a real tough one, and fuck you for asking it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the point of Movie God. That's a real tough one, and fuck you for asking it. Yeah, I'm with you.
You told me to come up with one, and I forgot to come up with one, and then I came up with one, and then Daniel kind of took it a little bit. Because,
still do it. Still do it. Still do it.
Well, actually, mine was because I was bouncing back some directors, and it was going to be Hitchcock, and I was going to say Francis Ford Coppola. Which one would you rather? But
I take it.
I know some people just adore that guy because I was jumping between Kubrick, Coppola, and was it Scorsese? I'm trying to think of the other one that I was thinking of. But I was going to go with Kubrick, but I think Kubrick was really inspired by Hitchcock. So if you get rid of Hitchcock, you kind of get rid of Kubrick.
If you're going to say Hitchcock and Kubrick, that would have been a tough decision for me. But since
I was going to say that, but I think that would kind of, if you know what I mean, it would cancel itself out because if you got rid of Hitchcock, you'd actually get rid of Kubrick.
I don't know that you would, honestly.
Really? Okay, let's go with that one then. Anyway, because Daniel fucked it up. So.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I don't know that Kubrick's style is like so derived. I mean, obviously Hitchcock has this huge influence, but mostly in terms of thrillers. I mean, I think The Shining doesn't exist in its current form without Hitchcock. But I think that Kubrick still kind of exists. I don't know that, Paths of Glory or Spartacus or Doctor Strangelove really owes anything.
Right.
So I think it's really just The Shining that really owes a lot to Kubrick.
Like as a horror guy, that's what I always think of.
Sure.
So if you look at a broader sense of it, then you can still have Kubrick.
Right. I think if you kill Hitchcock, you kill The Shining.
If you do that, you're killing my favorite Kubrick film, though. Honestly.
So there you go.
And I know
The Shining isn't even in my. It's probably in my top 5 Kubrick films.
And I love Kubrick, but I probably have the unpopular opinion of saying that Shining is my favorite of his, just because I read a lot into that film that's probably not even there, but that's just me personally.
I think that's probably one we should cover on the podcast then, because I would love to chat about that sometime.
Yeah. But I mean, if you were going with Alfred Hitchcock or Francis Ford Coppola, I'd fucking pick Hitchcock in a fucking heartbeat because Coppola made some really great films, but he really didn't do all that much.
What would we do without Dementia 5, really?
Or Dementia 13, you mean? Yeah.
Dementia 13, excuse me. Dementia 5. Dementia 5 is what he would have made otherwise.
With me growing up, I just can't get into any kind of mobster movie at all. And there's some people that say that those movies are the best probably movies ever made, and I can't see it.
Yeah, the Godfather stuff, it's really great, but I mean, they're honestly, for me, they're not films I revisit or really give a shit about.
No. Hitchcock or Coppola, there's no question. Hitchcock is a much more influential and important filmmaker than Coppola. I don't have an issue with The Godfather, but ultimately Coppola's career is The Godfather Part 1 and 2, a couple other things. He was just there in the 70s when Scorsese was there and when, Spielberg was there and when Altman was kind of making his best stuff, and he was just kind of in that crowd, and he made some great movies. The Conversation, I think, is his. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't.
Blowout is De Palma, I think. But ultimately Coppola just kind of, I don't know, he petered out after a while. If you kill him, you probably kill
Godfather 3.
Coppola. You kill Sofia Coppola, and you kill the Virgin Suicides, and you kill
Lost in Translation. Which is the only thing honestly, that's the only thing I actually value that more than the Godfather movies, Lost in Translation.
I might agree with you, Lee. I might agree with you.
Yeah.
I would kill Coppola because then maybe the Sopranos would have never happened. So that would have been great.
I actually think Goodfellas is a bigger influence on the Sopranos than the Godfather.
It is.
Quite
it
honestly.
Really is.
Anything to kill the Sopranos, and I would be happy. So.
Obviously you kill Coppola. I actually think that the Kubrick versus Hitchcock one is more interesting.
It is, yeah.
I think it would have been better if I would have looked at Kubrick in a broader sense, and I've been like, yeah, that would have been a better pick. But I was thinking of The Shining automatically because that's my favorite, and I'm like, well, if you kill Alfred, you kill The Shining too, and so
yeah.
Well, actually, that probably would have been a good one to be asked to me because then I would have all been pissed off. So there you go.
I would have to keep Kubrick in that case. Actually, I would kill Hitchcock twice tonight. Man, that's crazy.
Oh wow!
He is double dead, son.
I'll just say, Dementia 5, that is like the ultra cheap Robert Corman who didn't give him any money to work with. That would have been that film.
He couldn't even afford the extra 8. Oh my god. I couldn't afford an extra numeral for the title sequence. That's how cheap this movie was.
Yeah, we're not using any of our previous sets. We're just gonna build some paper mache shit.
Yep.
And that's all that's happening.
We're not gonna pay anyone.
Dementia 5 is the remake of Dementia 13. It's the ripoff. It's the Italian ripoff of Dementia 13. That's
I wonder if there's actually anybody who actually went through like a cutting room floor and picked up stuff and made a movie that way. Like, oh, it was just laying around.
Oh,
that was called Oasis of the Zombies, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
No, but there are directors who worked under Corman who took footage from films that were previously made that just basically cut out of those films. Like he's notorious for people taking reused film stock from films that have premiered. So you see the same scenes in certain films of Corman Productions, but there's also instances where filmmakers have just taken shit that just dumped on the fucking cutting room floor and incorporated that into their movies. So, like, that's how fucking cheap Corman was. Like, as much as people sort of applaud Corman and so he's a maverick and he's this great visionary, so, well, no, not really. He's this guy who cut budgets to the extreme, exploited talent. He definitely developed a lot of great talent, and a lot of great talent flourished out of his production company and went on to do great stuff. But working under Corman was literally, oh, here's some fucking rolls of film sitting on the dirty floor somewhere. Let's stick that into our movie to pad it out because we don't have a budget because Corman won't give us any fucking money.
Right.
So,
well, I watched Humanoids of the Deep, and I was really surprised when I found Corman had a hand in it because it looked like the monsters looked so good. It looks like you had to spend money on them. And I'm like, how did this happen?
He did spend money on them, and that was one of the films where he actually had like a female director in the start and then replaced her because he wanted to stick in more like monster rape, and she wasn't all for that.
That's the best part of the film.
Fish monster rape.
Monster rape.
Yeah.
It was like it just reminded me of like the Doom that came to Sarnoth kind of stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, or the Shadow over Innsmouth.
Or the shadow, the shadow over Innsmouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Corman is say what you will about him. There's some great things about him, but he was a fucking cheapskate, and a lot of people sort of basically worked as slaves under him for little or no pay and under really bad conditions. So I'll throw one out here. I guess I'll probably throw it more to Daniel than Paul, but my movie god choice for this week is you have to eliminate one of these two actors, and these are two sort of prominent British actors who, one of them's, a bit older than the other, but they both sort of came to stardom in the sort of same period, and you have to eliminate, sir, either Sean Connery or Michael Caine.
Oh, son of a bitch.
That's a good one. You know what? I'm not even really going to discuss this one. I'm just going to kill Sean Connery because I'd be fascinated to see what would happen to the Bond series without him.
But I like him in Bond. He's my favorite Bond, and I like him in other crap that he's been in. Unfortunately,
I mean,
I even liked him in The Rock.
He's a great actor. Like I think
I really like Michael Caine. I love Dress to Kill. I like Michael Caine a lot.
Without Sean Connery, would Bond have even happened? I think that's a reasonable question.
Here's the question: would Christopher Lee have become Bond at that point? Because he was originally one that Ian Fleming wanted for Bond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it seemed like they stepped on Ian Fleming's toes every chance they could. At the same time, though.
But if they didn't have a Sean Connery to pick from, would they have probably relented and gone with Christopher Lee?
Well, they did. Well, the thing is, they got rid of Sean Connery then and picked some guy just because they thought he was, the right style, and it was a crap film.
Well, even without Sean Connery, suppose Christopher Lee becomes Bond
and kills people with his teeth.
Well, and has one movie or two movies that don't. Sean Connery was Bond. It's not the Bond character was sold by Sean Connery.
Yeah, Bond didn't die because Sean Connery wasn't there.
And it's not that there was. It's not just the Bond franchise; it's everything that came from it. And this whole 2 decades of film were basically just Bond rip-offs for a long time. And I don't know, like, it's hard for me to think what the Michael Caine performance, like, what do I think of when I think of the Michael Caine? But I think it's almost more interesting to keep him than it is to keep Sean Connery. Like, it's
Well,
I feel like...
the Italian job, right? Wasn't he in the Italian job?
You get the Italian job, you get Carter.
You get Carter dressed to kill. You get...
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you kill one or the other, you don't get The Man Who Would Be King, which is one of my favorite all-time movies.
I actually haven't seen that film.
That is a fantastic fucking great fucking film. And I think that's the only film that those two actually appeared together in. Those two are like kind of best friends as well, but that's like the only film they did together, I think. And if you kill Michael Caine, you don't get
You don't get Alfie.
You don't get Alfie. You don't get. It's either
Jaws the
Zulu.
Revenge.
Well.
I actually like Jaws the Revenge quite a bit. That's my actually second favorite Jaws movie.
Hold on, if you kill Michael Caine, then Sean Connery is in the third Austin Powers movie, and therefore we should then kill Michael Caine, because how brilliant would that be? You know?
Yeah,
that would be something. That would be something. But
the damn Belgians.
I don't know. Was Sean Connery retired? Was Sean Connery retired by then? Because League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was his last film.
Sean Connery wouldn't have retired. If Michael Caine didn't exist, Sean Connery would have just taken all the Michael Caine roles. That's that's the way that works.
Oh, geez. Well, then he would have been in, like, Blood and Wine with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
That would have been...
If you kill Michael Caine, you don't get to hear a guy go, I'm Batman. You know, so that's all gone. The Batman franchise is gone. Revitalization, which spawned all this, hero movie remake stuff. So,
yeah, he would have been an interesting Alfred, wouldn't he? Fuck. Michael Caine wouldn't have been in Sleuth with Laurence Olivier.
Yeah,
which is another great film, one of my favorite films. And I don't know if I could get rid of that film. Honestly, Sleuth and The Man Who Would Be King. See, that way I can't eliminate either one of them, and I'm glad I'm asking the question. I don't have to actually answer the question.
I think I keep Michael Caine, even though I think that there are some great Sean Connery performances. I would be fascinated to see what happens to the Bond franchise without Sean Connery. I think it becomes more interesting without Sean Connery.
And here's the question: if Sean Connery wasn't around, would Michael Caine be in Zardoz, which is what we're going to cover later this month?
No, it would have been Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins in a red diaper. Awesome.
Who would be the Highlander, though? That's the question.
Oh, shit.
Oh, that would have been Michael Caine.
Yeah, Michael Caine playing a Cockney Spaniard.
That could be only one, mate.
Oh, you fucking fuck, dude. You fucking bastard.
No, it would have been Liam Neeson. That's who.
Oh, yeah, Liam Neeson, yeah.
Dark man. Liam Neeson.
If you don't cut his head off, I will find you and I will kill you.
Oh, what the hell? I'll kill Sean Connery, too. That sounds
all right. Sean Connery, you're dead to us, sir. So, movie god. There you go, guys. So we will now go to our main event. This is a film Daniel picked, and this is Vampyros Lesbos.
Bestialische Morde im Dunkeln des modernen Istanbuls. Jener geheimnisvollen, jahrtausendealten Stadt im Orient.
Lass ihn aufwachen! Irgendwie!
Eine gewagte und harte Verfilmung des alten Dracula-Themas, dessen Erbe Schrecken, Entsetzen und Grauen bedeutet. Eine gnadenlose, tödliche Jagd.
Gleichzeitig erregt dieser Traum mich auch. Ich bin mehr als einmal schon dabei zum Orgasmus gekommen.
Rätsel über Rätsel in einem Film voller Spannung und
Ich
Sex.
habe lange keine Zeit mehr gehabt, so in der Sonne zu liegen. Es macht Spaß, nackt im Sand zu liegen. Besonders zu zweit, finden Sie nicht auch? Sie versuchen mir Linda wegzunehmen,
Aber warum kommen Sie dann hierher?
weil du in dieser Stunde sterben wirst.
Ein blutiger Weg, voller grauenhafter Entdeckungen. Frauen im Banne des unheimlichen Erbes und uralten Fluches des Grafen Dracula.
And I'll take it over, let it go to you, Daniel, to describe the plot and get us started.
Ooh.
I think we should make Paul describe the plot personally.
All right, here we go. Here we go. A blonde lady working overseas has disturbing sexual dreams that she can't understand. She goes to her thing. She gets basically inheritance problems, so she has to go check out some problem in an island owned by Count Dracula. Finds a vampire, gets ensued in her web, and tries to fight to stay alive. .com. Bye.
Actually, that's a fairly...
That's a very good summary of the first third of the film. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, what are you gonna do? There we go.
So basically, this is sort of a third kind of German-Spanish art film, a third extended lesbian sex sequences, and a third people talking randomly in doctor's offices with occasional violence. That's sort of the strategy of this film. You know, Paul isn't wrong. He describes very very accurately the basic structure of the film. What I really admired about this was, and I did enjoy this film. I actually found it referenced in a feminist magazine article where I was reading about queer cinema, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we get more into the themes of the film. You know, I saw it referenced, in particular the lead character played by Miranda Soledad, who I was definitely kind of like, well, this is something I need to see. And so I mentioned it to Lee, hey, can we cover this film? And he goes, sure, whatever. You know, I'm like, look, lesbian vampires. I think we're all going to be on board with like 1971 film from Germany called Lesbian Vampires. Yes, we're down, no problem. I think what struck me was the visual style of the film. I think it definitely has these kind of long sequences of kind of not a lot going on structurally. I think it's definitely. I mean, there are some issues with this film, but I think ultimately it works in what it attempts to do, and that it kind of takes these basic elements of, yes, it's made on a low budget, yes, it's made in a few weeks, yes, it's basically just a delivery system for a little bit of blood and some tits, but at the same time it's very artistically made. It's made with an eye towards direction. There are some really interesting themes going on, and it's got really interesting characters, and I think I'm gonna dig into that a little bit more as we talk about it more. But I really enjoyed this film.
I liked it a lot. I thought visually this is probably one of Franco's best films. Honestly, I haven't seen a lot of his early stuff. Like I saw his Dracula, which preceded this, which was pretty good. I've seen a couple of his other films from this period, but for the most part, most of the stuff I've seen was like his later sort of skin flicks and stuff, which were overtly more sleazy and just like no plot at all or whatever. But so it was kind of surprising to see a film from him that actually had a plot and actually had like decent camera angles and actual direction, thought to direction.
I mean, this is extremely well directed for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no question. This is I mean, Franco was kind of co-director on Chimes of Midnight with Orson Welles, and I didn't kind of realize that until I started kind of looking into him a little bit more. And I'm like, you see Wells's influence in this. Like this is not like a cheap knockoff piece of crap. The way Oasis of the Zombies was, Zombie Lake was to a lesser degree. I mean, this is a film. This is somebody like actively trying to make something that's visually dynamic and interesting.
Yeah, this is sort of when Franco still gave a shit before he just sort of became this like director for hire running around Europe and different places making whatever low-budget shit that he can get money for, right? It really shows, like, he actually has some visual style here. Like, there's the scene with, after Miranda first encounters the lead character, what's her name? The first time Linda shows up at her place, like, and essentially, just to spell this out for people, this is essentially a retelling of Dracula, but instead of a male seducing women, this is a lesbian plot, so it's a woman seducing women.
Dracula saved her from being raped and murdered by men, so now she hates men, even though a man saved her, which is contradicting. But at the same time, she wants woman, mouth, pussy, love.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that.
That's kind of a weird idea of a man raped me, so now I turn into a lesbian. But that's kind of a weird. It's kind of interesting. Like it does basically follow Dracula structurally fairly closely to some degree.
I like the Dr. Seward. I'm like, hey, Dr. Seward, cool.
But like visually, the first time that Linda, and essentially she's the Harker character, and at the same time Harker's wife. Essentially, like it's like a combination of a couple different characters. Like a lot of the characters here are like combinations of the original characters from the Bram Stoker novel. Linda, she goes to this remote island to go over some inheritance stuff with the vampire. She doesn't know she's a vampire, but she gets seduced. After she is seduced and basically starts to become enthralled to this vampire, there's a scene where the vampire is laying in the pool and she thinks she's dead because she has that red scarf around her neck. And it looks like maybe it's blood pooling out into the water. Like, visually, I thought that was really well done. It looked really nice. I really like that fucking room that has those red tassels coming out of.
There's a lot of really interesting, like, set design, and like you look at a film this cheap and you go, that can't. Like, they can't have built that. Like, that had to have been there, but they chose to use it in the way they did. The way that scarves are used, and particularly the colors of the scarves that are used. I mean, there's a really intense kind of visual color dynamic that I find really fascinating. In
a lot of vibrant stuff. It reminded me of some films like some of the other films like Color Me Blood Red and things where they had a lot of vibrant atmosphere for like in the 60s and stuff. That's what it reminded me of a little bit.
You know what the sets remind me of, Daniel? The film we did a little while ago, The Libertine, reminded me of like this.
I was definitely thinking of The Libertine a couple of times when not only this one, but she kills in Ecstasy, which we'll cover down the line. There are some definite similarities. We'll just leave it at that. But it's and it comes out of that same kind of mentality. I mean, this is early 70s. It is kind of during the height of the sexual revolution. This is something that is intended to be consumed by young audiences. It's intended to be salacious, both in terms of its violence and in terms of its sexual content, but it's also intended to reach out in some kind of way and reflect the audience that it's exploiting. The idea of making films that have lesbian subtext. I mean, yes, there's a male gaze element to it. There's no question that there's a male gaze element to this, but at the same time, for young queer ladies at the time, this was perhaps the only, cinematic version of yourself that you saw ever.
And could you have picked more attractive women for this fucking film? Holy shit, they all are like supermodel quality. Like, I
mean, Miranda Soledad in particular. I mean, I was really struck by her. It's ironic. Did you look her up at all? Do you know anything else about her?
I did. Fortunately, she died shortly.
She died literally months after this film was made.
Yeah, and she was about to be one of Jess Franco's big stars. She was about to sign a multi-deal contract, and she was actually on the way to Jess Franco's place to sign the contract when she died in a tragic car accident. So
I mean, I can imagine her being like another Raquel Welch. Had she not died like at that moment, I think.
And then we were forced upon her replacement for the rest of his career, and his replacement is definitely not as attractive.
What's her name? Romay?
I know her name, but I can't think of it. But she was in Female Vampire, because I always thought this film was Female Vampire with a different title at first until I actually got a chance to see it.
Well, this film was actually remade in like the 80s by Franco as like Mumbo Sexual or something like that. It was called. It was remade, and then it was also remade in the 2000s as well as under a different title.
2004, Chlamydia, lesbian vampire. Chlamydia.
Maybe I don't know. I was reading up on it, and I should have put it in my actual notes, but
no,
it was remade a couple times.
Don't beat yourself up. You actually watched it.
Yeah. Soledad Miranda, she's really good in this. She's very stunning. She's got that kind of she's got that really sexy 70s look to her. Like she just you look at her and you go, yeah, that's a really sexy model from the 1970s. Like just like overtly. The performances are kind of art house and sort of stilted in a way. You know, they're kind of cold. But I think they work really well because the whole film is presented in sort of a kind of a dream logic kind of atmosphere to a certain degree. So that kind of works for that. You know, everyone feels like they're walking around in a fucking trance for most of the film. It didn't bother me too much. I thought it worked pretty well. It flowed pretty well. The boyfriend of the main character, Linda, is a little... he needed to dump that mustache. He really needed to dump that fucking mustache.
He couldn't dump the mustache back then, baby. It was all about the mustache.
But look at his hair. He's obviously overcompensating with his hair for his mustache because he couldn't grow a real mustache. That was.
You mentioned the dreamlike quality of the film, and I absolutely I think that's one of the keys to the film. Because there is a certain, and I think this gets overused, I think, in modern films and pushed too hard. The kind of was it real or was it fantasy element, and I think it really works in this film. Right. Because I think they do push too hard on it at the end. I think that they, oh no, that was just a dream, sweetie. Right. Where I don't think it worked at the end, but I think there is this sense of like, because like Linda kind of shows up and she's like, oh, there's this beautiful woman and she's sitting by the pool and she goes, oh, do you want to go swimming? And then suddenly we're swimming naked and then suddenly we're making out and everything, and it's like this. It simultaneously feels like a fantasy. It feels kind of like a nightmare. It feels kind of like there's a
wet dream,
dangerous element to it. But there's also like, it's also I'm being paid to go and like cater to this rich bitch and like take care of her estate, and like my job would just kind of be to go and do whatever she wants to do, sort of thing, And if that means kind of going and swimming for a while and then like, oh, you're attractive, and that's like there's an element of where like I kind of believe in 1971 in Turkey among the wealthy class that this is not exactly unexpected behavior. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it also sort of follows a sort of line of most vampire fiction to a certain degree, where the idea of the vampire being the seducer and exploiting repressed sexual desires.
There's a flip side to this, because the vampire actually becomes obsessed with her victim. And actually falls in love with Linda, which I think is a really interesting inversion of this concept in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Because
then it suddenly becomes about Linda and about her kind of agency and about that sort of thing, and it almost becomes a battle of wills and a kind of a battle of like who's going to kind of reign supreme in this relationship sort of thing as the film goes on. And I really like that element of it. Again, one of the things that kind of got me into this is talking about kind of queer characters in cinema, particularly queer women, which so much had to be kind of implied but not said. This does date back to the 30s. That article I posted to you did kind of start 36. Talking about these kinds of things. This has always existed. It's just kind of always been implied. And then here to kind of be able to do it for real, there is this kind of sense in which queer women had no representation on screen except for villains. And so, like, is it better to have, we have representation, but it's the bad guy. I mean, this is a legitimately evil character, but it's also someone who looks like me. And I think that there is that kind of the sense that the men in the film are terrified of female sexuality, and that the female sexuality is represented through supernatural qualities is absolutely something that's going on here. I mean, there's a moment where one of the older male doctors is literally standing over a woman in the throes of kind of sexual torture, agony, pleasure, and just not understanding what's going on. Like, you know,
she's crazy. She's insane.
She's obviously suffering from hysteria. No,
yeah.
She's fucking having a continual orgasm for like the last 40 hours, dude. Like,
and that's actually my favorite character in the film, Agra or whatever her name is.
Yeah. No, she's great.
Yeah, she's a mental patient. She's like a former sort of like, I guess, quote unquote victim of the vampire who's in the mental hospital or whatever it is. Actually, I think she's actually the best actress in the film because she does a great job basically just presenting herself, and she sort of substitutes as like the Renfield in the film.
She's definitely the Renfield of the film. I thought about that as you were talking about it. I'm like, holy shit, she's Renfield. That's amazing. You know,
She's a former victim of the vampire. The vampire actually still has feelings for her and is still connected to her. Like, she comes to her later in the film and says, "I have to leave you now." Because, you know, I found Linda, so I'm going to go for Linda. But, you know, she doesn't say that, but she's like, "I got to leave you now." But there's this, like, implied psychic connection between her and the vampire throughout the film, and then you get the same thing with Linda and the vampire. And a lot of the dream sequence stuff that Linda sees it's implied that, you know, some of it is the sort of the psychic connection, and it's how she interprets it or whatever. I think it's really well done. Like, there's a lot more going on in this film than people give it credit for. Like, it's actually fairly a lot deeper, I think, in a lot of ways visually. And I really actually kind of enjoyed it. I was watching, I was like, wow, this is way better than I thought it was going to be, because I'm familiar with Franco's really crap films, and it's like this film actually has characters, actually has an idea. It actually has a plot. It's not super fucking sleazy. Not that I hate super fucking sleazy. I appreciate sleazy. I like sleazy fucking Franco stuff. But this one is pretty dialed back for him. Two women kissing and caressing each other, and probably the most salacious thing in the film is the vampire, who is, by the way, she's like at night she does like a cabaret act where she goes to this club in Istanbul and she does this sort of, it's not quite it is a striptease, but it's like she takes her clothes off and puts it on another woman who's pretending to be a mannequin. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty sexy.
It's definitely performance art.
Yeah, it was pretty sexy. I liked it.
Well, you know, if you pretend it's art, I mean, and this is like it was like this was the time period where there were, you know, plenty of people kind of doing quote unquote performance art that was really just like, we want to be sexual, we want to express sexuality, we want to do it in a way that is acceptable to mainstream audiences. And what I think is really fascinating about the dance sequences is that they do represent kind of where she is in her head at the moment, but also you see lots of shots of the audience, which is largely consumed of middle-aged men, who are the perceived audience for the film. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bunch of dudes sitting around and watching pretty girls take their clothes off. And I do think that there's a self-reflexive quality to this that is kind of interesting.
By the way, I got a question. Like, Omar, he's with Linda, and, you know, he's her boyfriend, and he's like, yeah, I'm into you and all that shit. I just kind of wonder why he's taking her to like a lesbian cabaret show. I don't like. I mean, you know,
he's trying to prove that he's a modern male of the 1970s.
It's art, man. Look at this. How deep I take
if nothing proves that, it's his fucking mustache. Jesus Christ, because you know, but Jesus, like, Omar, dude. I don't know, sir. I don't know.
The only sad thing, I heard Jess Franco said that the only thing he liked about the film was Miranda and the atmosphere that surrounds her in the film. The rest of the film he thought was shit. He was really disappointed with the film.
That's his opinion, but he's wrong.
But
and I think he's objectively wrong as well. But
I was like, say, you were in the film. Shouldn't you glorify your own role?
I think she does a great job playing it cold, where it actually works really well for her as a vampire character. The scene where she first encounters Linda, like, she drugs Linda, puts her in a guest room, and then the scene where she pulls back the curtain and she's got a little bit of blood coming down her chin. And I thought that was a really striking scene. I think that worked really well. Mm-hmm. And it feels like also the Miranda character, she kind of has this sort of tragic bent to her, where it almost feels like she wants to die. Like she almost wants to pass on her vampirism to Linda and die. So there's also that sort of component to it. What are your guys' thoughts on Jess Franco doing a cameo here as the sort of the skeezy bellboy in the hotel who?
I've seen him do cameo before, and I think he does a very good skeezy bellboy act.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? You didn't get that far into the film, Paul, but it turns out he is actually the husband of the girl in the mental ward, who was the previous victim of the vampire. And I found that kind of unbelievable. I was kind of thinking, like, there's no way this hot blonde was going for this.
He had to give himself some props in the film, you know.
Well, this is basically author insert fantasy of you know, I'm a middle-aged man who's kind of dorky and has big glasses, and therefore I get to sleep with the hottest woman. All of the men in the picture, in both pictures that I watched from this director, are fucking these way out of their league women. You know? I say this as a man who gets women out of his league on a regular basis. Like, there's no question it happens. You know, I'm just saying that there is a certain like element of wish fulfillment for the director here. And just wait till you see his cameo and She Killed in Ecstasy. I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right.
I mean, Daniel's a sex god, but for Lee and I, any woman is out of our league.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. I always consider it the Rob Tappert syndrome, because I remember hearing when he was doing Army of Darkness, he was saying, get all excited and be like, I want girls in chains getting drug around, yeah, and I want that. And Sam was just like, shut up the whole time. No, I want more girls, and they got to naked, and they chains. And he gets all excited. Then he made Xena.
Yeah.
then he made Xena and all of his
then he made Xena. And, hold on, were we talking about lesbians in television again? Hold on.
Yeah, there it is. Bing, 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 bing.
There was no lesbianism in that.
Renee.
Come on, they were just taking a bath together. That was innocent.
With their tongues.
Yeah, no. But yeah, I think Franco made a point of doing these sort of characters in a lot of his films. Like, he just sort of inserted himself into them. And actually, I think he works pretty well in this film. Like I said, in some cases, some of the characters combine two characters. In this case, it's like a character split into two parts. You have my favorite character, Agra, in the mental hospital. She's part Renfield, and he's also part Renfield. He's also nuts.
I got a little bit of a Renfield vibe from him when I first saw him in the film.
Yeah, so he's like insane. He lost his wife to the mental hospital, and he's like murdering women now and shit like that in the fucking wine cellar. I don't know how he quite gets away with it. Like, apparently the owner of the hotel never goes down to the fucking wine cellar because he keeps that body of that one woman throughout the whole film in the fucking wine cellar. But hey, whatever. No, apparently no one likes wine in that fucking hotel. Yeah.
Have you ever had Turkish wine? It's horrible.
Apparently it must be bad, but it's really bad, fucking bad. But they had big vats of it down there, so whatever. But yeah, I think he added a nice little sort of it was kind of a hint of future things to come for his films where they got more sleazy and stuff. But he added like a nice little sleazy element to the film, and I think it worked pretty well.
What do you think of the way he ends the film?
It kind of falls apart to a certain degree. Like it doesn't. It kind of feels like, okay, we have to come up with an ending for this.
I like the idea that a woman is the vampire is now like in trouble, needs her help, and then she decides to say no, but stab her in the eye just in case.
Yeah, well, it's kind of weird because sort of goes away from the vampire myth to a certain degree.
Well, if you view the real vampirism, and I'm making air quotes here on a podcast, but if you view the vampirism, if you view the supernatural elements as representing what people were scared of, which, I mean, the lesbianism, the idea that women have sexual agency and like desire things that are not inarticulate men grunting on top of them horribly. In terms of their sexual experience, this kind of budding female sexuality being something that people are scared of, and that kind of being the essence of what the vampirism is and represented in the film. What you're seeing is that since Eva is the Linda is the now the one who is being desired. She has the vampiric quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she is able to bite and to kill and to essentially take the power away from the Miranda character, which there's some really interesting stuff with appearances and disappearances and the way that certain victims appear and disappear and the way that Miranda appears in a certain sequence and that sort of thing. Like, the way some of the supernatural powers work, there's some imagery going on there that I'm not sure is intentional and I'm not sure I completely understand, but is kind of fascinating. I mean, I definitely think there's a level of this film that we're just not prepared to talk about right now. Like, I really want to go through and take notes on this. Like, this is definitely, there's some really interesting stuff going on.
So before you expand on that, to go back to the vampire, say, stereotypes of what they can and can't do, much like lesbians, vampires burst into flames when they go into the sun, and that didn't happen in this film. So we have a problem here.
The thing about this is, like, I think it pulls more from the actual, like, Bram Stoker text to a certain degree.
Right.
Where Dracula actually could walk out in the sun.
Right.
And I think they imply here that Miranda Soledad's vampire character is essentially inherited Dracula's lord over vampires, I guess. Like, she is like the prime vampire to some degree, so she can, walk out in the sun.
Yeah.
Like,
she's the alpha vampire.
Yeah,
So
and
she
so
she has all the.
so that's
Right.
that's very convenient for her to romp out in the sun to some like 60s psychedelia music,
Right.
and
Yeah.
not burn to death.
When she was out there and the music was going, did anyone want to scream Austin Powers and like a "yeah, baby, yeah" kind
No,
of?
I was thinking either Austin Powers or Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon in Beach Party movies, right?
Well, there's definitely. I mean, did you know that like they actually re-released this soundtrack in 1995?
Yes.
And there's a track from this that's used in Jackie Brown.
I was well, you already spoiled it for me because that's the one I'm going to use for the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you, Daniel, did you catch that track in that film?
I actually didn't catch it. I didn't catch it because I've seen Jackie Brown a bunch, and I was sitting and I was watching this, and I did not catch it. I need to sit and watch it again just to.
It is. I will just spoil it for you. It is the scene where Ordell is sitting in his house, and he is smoking up some pot, and he is sitting there, and the scene basically focuses on him pondering how everything could have fucking gone wrong to this point. That song builds up and builds up and builds up in the background, and it works really well. And that's going to be the fucking end track, by the way. Spoilers for the fucking podcast.
It's nice that you brought that up because, as Daniel said, he was reading about this movie in a magazine, right? Was that recently or?
Yeah, no, it was actually on Bitch Media. It was on the website for a feminist
website. Uh-oh.
I read feminist magazines one-handed.
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, that was really funny because in 1995 is when I actually read the breakdown of the soundtrack and like a little review of the quick review of the movie. It was in Playboy. Slightly different, but
no, not at all.
That's how long it's been since I've known about it, but sadly I've never actually seen it where I could actually own it. I've never actually seen it to buy.
The whole soundtrack is on YouTube. The music was done by Franco himself and Manfred Hubler and Siggy Schwab. And actually, Franco, like a lot of people don't know, he did a lot of shit. Like, he was not just a director; he was a producer. He did a lot of makeup. He actually did the makeup effects for this film.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He did the music for this film. He did the music for other films. He has a lot of production credits. Like, if you look at his IMDb, he has an extensive fucking list of production credits, second director credits, stuff like that. Like, just tons of shit. Like, this guy was not a fucking hack. I mean,
no. Like, I mean, watching this film, watching any random 10 minutes of this film, you know he's not a hack. Now, maybe he became a hack later, or maybe he just decided, you know what, they'll pay me the same either way. Like, I get that. Like, this is just my job. Oh, you gave me $4, and here's a third of the movie I'm going to use, recycled footage for because fuck you, I don't care anymore. Yeah. But this is a real filmmaker, and this is somebody who certainly on the basis of this film, I was absolutely interested in exploring more of his work, and I will, whether we do him on the show or not.
I do. This film does remind me a little bit of Ed Wood's Necromania. Remember that film? Have you ever seen that one? It's basically a porn film that is wrapped around an occult kind of a horror film at the same time.
Is that the one where they're in the woods and they're all dancing and shit?
No, that's they're in a mansion. They're in a mansion.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
because
there's a man who actually a man who actually transfers into a female, and then seduces people and sucks their energy out of them. But it reminds me of the film has little noirs. I actually thought when I first started watching this film, the kind of shipyard kind of ocean scenes was reminding me of Zombie, the beginning of Zombie a little bit, just for a second. It was pretty fun. I like Jess Franco. I actually especially like him when he teams up with Gene Roland and makes films. The teamwork films they do together are really good.
But not so much the ones where it's like Franco starts and then Gene Roland takes over the film because Franco's like, I don't have enough money to make this film good.
Yeah.
What was it? It was either Zombie Lake.
It was Zombie Lake. I have that on VHS too. That
was the one where he jumped out at the beginning.
Yeah.
At the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. But I do like a lot of the films that they do together.
Can we talk about the setting just a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
It's shot in Turkey. Looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
I really admire the use of the photography and the use of the setting. Just kind of adds to that like otherworldliness to it. You know, you don't quite know where it's set at first until you're kind of told.
Just to add in there for a sec, the fact that it's done in Turkey actually sort of goes back to the original Bram Stoker text, where I've seen some contrary evidence lately. Stoker did not base his stuff on Vlad Tepes. If you go by the conventional understanding that Vlad Tepes was the inspiration for Dracula, he was the guy who was fighting the Turks in that region, and he was your inspiration for Dracula. So Istanbul, Turkey, it's set in the sort of region where that story originated from, if you believe that that was the inspiration for Bram Stoker's text, and I think that works very well for the movie.
Well, Constantinople.
They might
well,
be
then
giants.
we have to end on Istanbul and not on Constantinople. Yeah, there we go. No, I find it interesting because I watched this film and didn't even like process it as a retelling of the Dracula mythos. I just watched the film and enjoyed it for what it was and just kind of followed the characters, and because I think the characters as they are portrayed in the film are rich enough to and then kind of the thematic elements, the more kind of gender, the queer elements, kind of drag me along. But like listening to you guys talk about how it really is just a retelling of the Dracula myth, like once you said it, I'm like, well, of course it is. How did I miss that? It's like such an obvious element that I just completely missed because I was really involved with the characters, and I found it.
But it's better. It's better and more refreshing to see it this way than when he did Dracula later and really just did it like plain Jane. You know what I mean?
When he did Dracula with Christopher Lee looked more like Dracula than pretty much any cinematic Dracula you see, other than like the Gary Oldman one.
I was gonna say Mustache Chaos.
Yeah, I mean, because the original Dracula was a swarthy, kind of Eastern European guy with a mustache. I mean, that was Dracula. That was the original Dracula.
I could say about Jess Franco's Dracula is if you're a fan of Jess Franco's other films, Dracula is probably the least sexual, if you know what I mean.
There's like little going on there sexual.
Yeah,
I mean,
very, very little.
And that's the one with Klaus Kinski in it, right? As Renfield?
Hold on, if there's Klaus Kinski, there's got to be sex going on, at least in my opinion.
When they hit cut, he just rips everyone's clothes off and fondles their feet.
We need to have a show where we just do Klaus Kinski films at some point. Because
I would be down for that. Yeah.
And he's worth talking about. As much as I love Klaus Kinski, there's definitely some stuff that's come to light in the last few years about him that's kind of objectionable. But at the same time, so that should be a good discussion, I think, at some point about comparing art to the person who, actually did the art.
That's absolutely a conversation I think we could have.
Klaus Kinski and Hugo, I'm trying to remember.
Hugo Stiglitz?
Stiglitz, yeah. We got to do Stiglitz, too.
Well, we did Stiglitz in Nightmare City. You're not going to tell me Hugo Stiglitz raped his daughter, did you?
No.
Okay.
He raped somebody else's.
Yeah, we'll do a Klaus Kinski and we'll do a Woody Allen, and we'll do them as one episode, and then
There you go.
Jesus. Yeah, Klaus Kinski is weird. You could do like several different ones with him, because you could do like a Klaus Kinski horror episode. You could do a Klaus Kinski spaghetti western episode, because he did several of those fucking films. So
You did some war films.
I say we do Aguirre and Hannah and her sisters in one episode.
Click, 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 click.
it might be too much for the general public to.
To do those two together, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
I want you to fap like rabbits and cry yourself to sleep.
Yeah. I think we'll figure something out. But, final thoughts on this film, Daniel?
I did just want to very briefly just talk about the use of the blood in the film.
Yeah, okay.
There is a repeating visual motif. Well, there's also a visual motif of the scorpion, which I think has a very obvious representation. But I think it's a really interesting kind of use of the scorpion. But I think there's this repeated thing of the trail of blood down the curtain and down the glass that you see. The use of blood, the way that the blood being spilled when the vampires are biting, and the very sexual way that that's done. If there was a woman on this podcast, I think she would have a very clear thing to say about the way that women have a very different interaction with blood than men.
Red Wings.
At least in terms of a cisgendered element of it. There is this. There is a very clear sexual element of blood, and I think that that's something that feels intentional in this film, and even if it's not, I think it's very much there.
I'll say I noticed when.
Are we talking about Carrie or this movie? What are you talking?
No, I'll say I noticed when the first time that she bit Linda, where you basically see it where she's drawing back from her throat, the blood's incredibly viscous. It looks like fucking maple syrup, when she's. So there's almost kind of allusion to almost like seminal fluid.
The blood definitely has sexual connotation, and that's kind of just something I felt like I couldn't leave this episode without saying.
I think everything in this film has sexual connotations.
Everything in every film has sexual connotation to me, really.
That's right. I forgot.
I will always talk about sex in movies.
Just so you know, Paul's holding up a banana right now.
Hold on. Paul's holding a banana, and Lee is drinking from a jug of water, and I just think there's the two of them.
Just so you know, this water is not viscous at all. It's very, very light, very drinkable.
You would say that. No,
it's not salty at all, just so you know. There you go. And you just put a banana into a pouch of some sort.
A cup.
Other than that, I could probably, I could do a live comm of this. I could sit down with notes and actually talk about this to some detail. But I think we've said a lot. I think we've kind of covered the main themes, and I definitely think this is a film that's worth rediscovering. If you're at all interested in kind of what we've talked about and kind of sexual revolution and that sort of thing, and kind of the intersection of horror and eroticism, I think we talked a lot when we were talking about the slashers about the way that the violence in those films comes at the expense of the women through that they get nude essentially when they're about to be killed.
Yeah.
Here they get nude when they're about to kill, which I think is an interesting. It's not really an inversion of the slasher formula because it comes first, but it is a different kind of visual metaphor, and again something we're going to talk about if we talk about the other film that I have been mentioning.
We're definitely going to cover that one. That'll be fun.
So that's kind of all I have to say about this right now, but it definitely is worth seeking out, and that's it.
Paul, your final thoughts on the 15 minutes you watched of this film?
I think it's good. I like the artistic aspect. Definitely set in its time period. Definitely, it's a film that it's set in its time period. But it definitely has a lot of good stuff about it. I like the fact that if you're going to be artistic, use things to express other things artistically. And I really didn't care about how much blood they used or this and that. I liked when they were showing the scarves as blood dripping everywhere. They were using scarves to show her in the light and then to kind of cover her in a veil of blood. You know what I mean? Using that as an artistic way to show the horror behind the face of beauty. You know, that kind of thing that I liked about it. It's definitely a film that I'll definitely pick up. I have to find it on a certain format and pick it up. But it's one of Jess Franco's more artistic, has a purpose films that also is laden with sexuality and nudity, but like I said, it's more of his actual film within a film, kind of a film, so where it's not just, oh, guess what? No reason at all, we're going to shave your pussy. You know, and that actually happens in one of his films. For no fucking reason at all. So yeah, definitely good. This is definitely one of his probably better films out of his repertoire. So.
Yeah, and my thoughts pretty much reflect that. It's refreshing to actually see an actual film from Franco as opposed to just basically a softcore porn that gets as sleazy as possible. And again, not that I object to that. I enjoy sleazy porno, whatever. But this actually shows that, you know, Franco actually was a great filmmaker. Like, he actually had a lot of talent. He actually applied himself to it. He can make great films. This is not necessarily a great film, but there's a lot of good stuff in it.
It's pushing towards greatness. Like it is. It's actively trying to be a great film. In this genre, in this budget, in this time, in this place, that's almost worth anything. You know what I mean?
To see Franco actually give a shit is great. Because you look at this compared to Zombie Lake and fucking Oasis of Zombies, and it's like so night and day that it's you wouldn't think it was the same fucking filmmaker. I mean, it's just so overtly different. But yeah, it was really enjoyable. I'm glad you suggested it, Dan. We're definitely going to look at She Killed in Ecstasy at some point, sometime soon, probably in the new year. I really enjoyed it. I think it's worth watching. I think people should definitely check it out. It's a little hard to find online with any subtitles. Daniel went to painstaking sort of degrees to get subtitles and the actual movie and burn them together for us to watch. If you watch it online, it's pretty much just in German language.
Yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme with some of these films of this era, is that you can find it pretty easily if you're looking at illicit sources if you speak German.
Yeah.
If not, then you might have to spend a few bucks to actually get it.
There are DVDs and Blu-rays out there. Synapse Films released this in 1999 on DVD. Severn Films recently released this in 2015 on DVD and Blu-ray. So if you want to check those out, you can find it there. And no doubt, I don't know if you get English language dubs, but you'll definitely get the subtitles at the very least.
Severn also did She Killed in Ecstasy, and I do believe they have English on it, both of them.
Ah, nice. Look for the runtime on this. There is the one we all watched was, 89 minutes or something along those. It was an hour and a half we watched.
14:98.
Yeah. There's an Argentina version of this that's 91 minutes that I think just has extra padding. The Spanish version of this film cuts out a lot of the nudity and actually adds in extra padding for some weird reason, which is kind of weird because it's in Spain. You think there would be more nudity, but for some reason it's not. But the one you want to look for is generally like the 89-minute version. So
I want to watch films where they don't cut anything and add extra nudity for no reason.
Well, yeah, that would be the...
that would be Busty Cops. Yeah, that would be that.
That would be Busty Cops, yeah. No plot, no... Yeah. Okay, Daniel, you want to tell people where they can find you on the interwebs?
Sure. You can listen to me talk about Doctor Who if you're at all a Doctor Who fan, and you haven't heard me say this on every single episode of this podcast I've appeared on, at oispaceman.libsyn.com. That's oispaceman.libsyn.com. We do classic and new series, and we have very recently entered the Peter Davison era, and we just did an interview with Elliot Chapman, who is a professional actor, and I think that was a really good conversation. And we barely even talked about the episode we were supposed to talk about, which was pretty awesome. And around the time this episode airs, if you're listening to it, the next episode we're going to put out is the last 4 episodes of Series 9. If that's something you want us to That's going to be a bit of a clusterfuck. I have no idea how we're going to cover all that in one episode, but we're going to do it. So, congratulations. So there you
go. Paul, where can people find you?
PA Brew News, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Funeral Dust on Facebook and YouTube. And Back Mountain DIY, YouTube. Back Mountain Arts and Crafts on Facebook.
All right. And we're going to go into here. I believe the name of the song is "The Lion and the Cucumber" from the from the soundtrack for Vampyros Lesbos. It is the same song you will hear in part in Jackie Brown, and I was actually kind of amazed when I heard it when it was just playing. Like, I didn't know it was in this film. I was just watching the film, and it's like all of a sudden that popped up. And was like, I've heard this song before. What the fuck? Fucking it's Ordell Roby smoking up pot and trying to figure out the plot of the film of Jackie Brown and figure out how he got fucked over. So that's what we're going to play, and we're going to go out. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please send your comments and questions in. You'll get all the information at the end after the song. And thank you, Daniel and Paul, for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Let's go out with a pussy and a cucumber.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For our other episodes, links to Daniel, Paul, and Lee's other stuff, and links to some great podcasts of similar interest, visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can leave us comments on the site or directly email us. We listen and respond to everything. Thank you. Drive through.